Here's what's coming up on The World Today. Traffic resumes at the West Canal after the Ever Given, stranded for days, is refloated. Trial of the century, that's how the trial in the murder of George Floyd is being described as it begins today. Plus, the World Health Organization says its report on the origins of the coronavirus will be released tomorrow. Some scientists take a swipe at it. A warm welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani. A catastrophic disaster has been averted in the Suez Canal as the Ever Given, the huge 400-meter-long ship trapped in the canal, is refloated. The ship became jammed diagonally across a southern section of the canal early last Tuesday, halting traffic on the shores, a shipping route between Europe and Asia. And while normal traffic can now resume, the incident caused significant delays to shipments, which experts say highlights the relative fragility of the global supply chain and its heavy reliance on the maritime industry. Global trade routes had already been somewhat disrupted by the coronavirus pandemic. A surge in demand for goods and tight shipping container supplies had been quite important to meet. Now, families awaiting news of their loved ones following an attack on northern Mozambique, the province of Cabo Delgado, where the town of Palma, which is the location where the attack happened, has been the target of a simmering insurgency linked to Islamic State since 2017. Militants struck Palma, a logistics hub for international gas projects worth $60 billion on Wednesday last week. The government has yet to establish control of the area. One South African woman who lost her son in the attack says his death was unnecessary.
I saw a post on this info group that the guys were going to try and make a run for it because the insurgents had got right round the hotel and the helicopters couldn't pick them up, and the only way they stood a chance of getting out was to go out in a convoy. And after 5 o'clock that evening, I heard on that group that there had been people shot and killed in the convoy. My son was killed unnecessarily so, and in a very violent and unacceptable way. He was just such a kind, loving, joyful person and certainly didn't deserve to die like that. He's got a wife and 3 young children who've now got to grow up without them.
Well, from one killing to a murder, prosecutors in the trial over the murder of the African-American man George Floyd began today. The defense has given its opening statement saying there are always 2 sides to a story and that the evidence is far greater than 9 minutes and 29 seconds, which is how long George Floyd lived while Derek Chauvin put his knee on his neck. It's been described as the trial of the century by some experts watching. We're likening this in terms of pop culture, policing, putting policing and racism on trial in the United States. A look at the pictures from earlier today, George Floyd's family and their attorney taking a knee in memory of him outside a Minneapolis courthouse as the trial started for the officer who knelt on Floyd's neck.
We needed to pray for this family, but also we needed to pray for America, because this is a seminal moment, a landmark moment in American history. And so we need to pray that America can live up to its high ideals. We need to pray that America can continue to be the beacon of hope and justice for all the world to marvel, because the whole world is watching. No peace.
Understandably, this trial will be a major milestone within the U.S. federal criminal justice system, as it will question whether or not Derek Chauvin was one of the causes in the death of George Floyd. Our Washington correspondent Maria Bird sent this in.
Opening statements begin today in the Derek Chauvin trial as he is being charged with third-degree murder in the killing of George Floyd. This trial begins after almost 2 weeks of jury selection.
You have been summoned as potential jurors in the case of State of Minnesota versus Derek Chauvin.
In preparation for Derek Chauvin's trial today, the George Floyd family and civil rights leaders held a candlelight vigil.
The criminal justice system is on trial tomorrow. Chauvin is in the courtroom, but America's on trial. And nobody can tell me if that was a white citizen down there on the ground who the police have restrained and handcuffed, face down with their knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, that this would be a hard case. Nobody would say that. It's only because it was an unarmed black man face down that everybody is talking about. This is going to be a hard case.
As the world watches the first day of the Derek Chauvin trial in the George Floyd case, peaceful protests are expected across the U.S. From Washington, Maria Bird, Channels Television News.
Maria joins us now with more on the trial, which began today. Maria, great to see you. Give us the latest on what's been going on in the courthouse in Minneapolis.
Well, this is obviously taking on, the entire country is standing and watching. Obviously, the opening statements, and obviously there is going to be discussion around was Derek Chauvin responsible for any part of the actual death of George Floyd. And so that's what people really have to understand. This is really going to be about causal. And this is really going to be, did any part of what he did cause the death? Was it the full part of why he died? Maybe not. But I think this case is really going to just focus on whether or not he had any part in that. The opening statements today and what we're going to see today is really going to be surrounding the actual act of what occurred. Yes, this has been an issue of race in America, and this has been a reckoning of race in America, but the issues of race are going to be put aside for a little bit during this case, because the reality is this is going to be about the justice system and the way in which police officers are allowed to restrain those who they are trying to put under arrest. And so this could be groundbreaking and changing in the way in which police are allowed to restrain those that they are looking to arrest and they are looking to detain.
Maria, a lot of people are invested in this trial, and that's quite understandable. But basically, people want justice for Floyd. But it's beginning to look like, it's not just about justice for Floyd. It's much bigger than the issue at hand.
You're exactly correct. This is much bigger than justice for George Floyd. And we'll see those witnesses like the 911 dispatcher who's actually right now on the stand, and she's being cross-examined at this time. So we'll begin to see kind of how the process is when someone is actually detained by police, and if the public sees that there is wrongful acts being done, how does the police respond? What is the processes and way in which police are to respond to individuals who they believe have committed a crime? And so this could totally change the way in which we see police interaction with those who are potential criminals, but also police interaction in our communities.
Maria, thank you. Thank you, for just explaining that. And just to be clear, Derek Chauvin is the only one on trial here, but what kind of witnesses do they expect, and will there be other people also giving testimonies at this trial?
You're exactly correct. And the other officers will probably be on trial later in the summer. They're expecting that to happen sometime in August. But to your point in regards to those witnesses, you'll see the 911 dispatch. You'll see those who trained Derek Chauvin in the way in which you should retain someone who you are trying to arrest. You will see individuals who've been on the police force. So you'll begin to see forensics, which will come on. So there will be a myriad of individuals who play a role in the criminal justice system in the U.S. that will be called to the stand to actually bear witness for this case.
Maria, a lot to look forward to today, and I'm sure a lot of Americans will be watching this trial as it progresses. Thanks again for keeping us up to date. We'll be reaching out to you much later.
Thank you so much for having me.
So more than 400 people have been killed since Myanmar's military junta took over on February 1st. Many of the deaths have happened during anti-coup protests as security forces continue to crack down on the protesters. While international condemnation has grown against the Myanmar junta, so has the intensity with which the government has been quelling the protests.
It's been weeks since the people of Myanmar have been out on the streets calling for a return to civilian rule and reinstatement of their civilian leaders. Protests that have now turned into regular face-off with security forces will now continue to kill as they try to disperse crowds. This video made it online earlier today, showing protesters in the northwestern city of Monwa firing projectiles and fireworks at security forces. Another video captures the moment anti-coup protesters in Monwa rescue their comrades at one of the front lines on Sunday to safety by running on all fours to dodge bullets and running through the back alley of people's houses. Saturday was perhaps the bloodiest day, as at least 114 deaths were reported in the crackdown. Based on a tally by the Assistance Association for Political Prisoners Advocacy Group, 460 civilians have been killed since the coup. Myanmar's army fighter jets launched airstrikes on Saturday on a village near the Thai border in territory controlled by an armed ethnic group. The reported assault is the most significant attack for years in the region. Earlier in the day, local news said Brigade 5 forces overran an army base, killing 10 soldiers, including a lieutenant colonel. Thailand's prime minister says his government is preparing for a potential flood of refugees from the country. 3,000 people have already fled to Thailand, following heavy fighting between the Myanmar army and some of the 24 ethnic armed groups that control parts of the country. And while people mourned the death of a 13-year-old boy in a funeral on Sunday, even with protest, the junta again cracked down, bringing more condemnation from the international community.
Joining us now is Director General Bolitak Center for Diplomacy and Strategic Studies, Professor Bola Akitarewa. He joins us from Yaba. Professor, it's great to have you on the program. Why do you think the international community is stalling on intervening in the situation in Myanmar? We're seeing deaths happen on a daily basis with the protesters facing off with security forces. Now we understand death toll has exceeded 400, and this all happened within a month since the junta took over. Why are they still stalling?
I think there are some basic factors. The first one is that the United Nations Security Council, which has the main responsibility for the maintenance of international peace and security worldwide, is divided against itself. The P5, that is the permanent members, 3 of them are united in condemning the situation in Myanmar. 2 others, basically China and Russia, have been mute. So they kept quiet, leaving United States, France, and the United Kingdom to do the condemning. And the house divided against itself cannot stand, especially...
Professor, if you could just turn off your television. We're actually getting a call back here. We really want to hear what you have to say. Could you just do that quickly and then continue with your response?
Now, the second factor is that Myanmar is a sovereign state, even though a small state. So the principle of sovereign equality requires that it should also be respected within the framework.
We do apologize. Seem to be having some problems with Professor Akitarewa's audio there. We'll try to reconnect with him so we can get more on what he was saying. But coming up on The World today, we have more stories on the global scene. Plus, if you love Destiny's Child, hang around for this story, as you might be able to get your hands on a few memorabilia. Stay with us. Welcome back. Let's check in on the global pandemic as international health experts say they have concluded that the coronavirus most likely passed to humans from a bat through another animal. Though a highly anticipated report by the World Health Organization already casts doubt on theories surrounding the origin of the pandemic, including that the virus leaked from a high society lab in central China or was introduced to Wuhan through the imported frozen food. The specialist team of the WHO appointed and Chinese ex-scientists say that it would have been an extraordinary situation if COVID-19 was imported from another place because it had not been detected elsewhere at the time. WHO Director General Tedros Ghebreyesus does say the report will be released tomorrow, March 30. But here's a look at what's happening elsewhere in the world.
Thousands flocked to shopping malls, city centers, parks and beaches across Israel as the country relaxed into a Passover much freer of COVID-19 closures than last year. The Jewish holiday, which celebrates freedom from biblical slavery, began on March 27, just 2 days after the health ministry announced that half of the country had received 2 doses of COVID-19 vaccines. German tourists are queuing up to get tested for COVID-19 at Palma de Mallorca airport before going back home after the country introduced a requirement for all airline passengers entering the country to provide a negative coronavirus test result before departure. There have been growing concern over increased travel over the Easter holiday season after airlines added hundreds of flights to the Spanish island of Mallorca, where the infection rate is below the threshold at which tests are required. And Mexico has taken delivery of 1.5 million doses of AstraZeneca's COVID-19 vaccine from the United States, following an accord President Joe Biden made with the country this month. The vaccine were the initial batch in an agreement to send some 2.7 million AstraZeneca doses from the United States to help Mexico offset local shortages for its drive to inoculate its population of 126 million. Meanwhile, England's stay-at-home lockdown order ends today, with people allowed to meet up outside in groups of 6 for the first time in nearly 3 months. Though Prime Minister Boris Johnson is calling for caution due to rising coronavirus cases in Europe. He has also warned that coronavirus variants pose a risk to Britain's vaccine rollout, which is the 4th fastest in the world after Israel, the United Arab Emirates and Chile. Finally, Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro is proposing paying for vaccines against the coronavirus with oil, though providing little details about how the scheme would work. President Maduro says Venezuela is working to pay for vaccines from the World Health Organization's COVAX mechanism, which provides vaccine access to poor countries, both through Venezuelan funds frozen in overseas accounts due to sanctions and through oil shipments.
Dignidad y recursos tenemos. Dios lo sabe todo.
A Paris court today found French drug maker Chauvin guilty of manslaughter and deception over weight loss pill mediator and fined it 2.7 million euros, according to local media. France's health ministry says that at least 500 people died of heart valve problems in France because of exposure to the active ingredient in mediator, a drug that was withdrawn from sale in 2009. A court today also fined France's drug regulator and some 303,000 euros. Servier has acknowledged in the past the mediator had serious consequences for some patients and agreed to compensate some victims, but it also said it would fight inaccuracies and false statements. Customs officials in Ecuador discovered 185 baby tortoises packed inside a suitcase that was being sent from the Galapagos Islands to the mainland on Sunday. The reptiles had been wrapped in plastic and were found during a routine inspection at the main airport on the island of Baltra. 10 of them died. One of the biggest threats to Galapagos tortoises is illegal trading for animal collectors and exotic pet marketers. Tortoises seized at the airport on Balcha are thought to be less than 3 months old. And if you love the former girl pop group Destiny's Child, then you would love this story and might be able to get your hands on a few memorabilia if you have the right amount of cash, that is. And that's because an auction is going on for some of the clothes the stars wore during performances. Take a look.
Stage costumes worn by the group at the height of their fame are hitting the auction block in June, along with gowns belonging to Lady Gaga, Whitney Houston and Cher. Julienne's Auctions says it is selling more than 100 lots of costumes owned and used by Destiny's Child members Beyoncé, Kelly Rowland and Michelle Williams during the late 1990s and early 2000s. The outfits include the coordinating gold leather costumes worn by the three survival singers during the VH1 television tribute to Diana Ross in 2000. And the trio of futuristic metallic red and silver leather jumpsuits the women wore in their Independent Women Part 1 music video that was the theme song for the 2000 movie Charlie's Angels.
See, it's Women's History Month and we're announcing this great auction that includes so many iconic females, so many legendary ladies included in this event, and of course taking centre stage will be about 100 lots coming from Destiny's Child.
The dozens of costumes, most of which were designed by Beyoncé's mother, Tina Knowles Lawson, are expected to fetch between $600 and $10,000 each at the 3-day auction in Beverly Hills on June 11th to 13th. Julienne's said the outfits were donated by the families of the Destiny's Child singers after spending years in storage. A portion of the proceeds will benefit Music Cares, the charitable arm of the Recording Academy that has helped musicians who are struggling because of the coronavirus pandemic. Destiny's Child, one of the most influential female groups of the early 2000s, went through several lineups and officially split in 2006. Beyoncé went on to forge a huge solo career.
That's it on The World Today. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Bani.